Hey, I want to jump ahead a little bit to kind of the present day, part of your journey. I would categorize, the last 7 or 8 years for you as a pretty dense time, right? Both personally and professionally. We know, a little bit already about you getting started with State Farm, but what, can you elaborate maybe more on the growth of your office and your team? I mean, I think what you said about your office manager is definitely relevant. It sounds like, well, one thing I think is relevant to carry on here is she came from a retail store, is that what you said? And so
Correct.
You kind of
Yeah.
watched her. So you're not, it sounds like you're not locked into a certain background or pedigree. You're looking more for the personal traits and the heart and like growth-oriented people. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just trying to unpack some of that.
I actually find that hiring people from the insurance industry or who have insurance backgrounds is actually worse than having people with no insurance experience, because they have their things that they think they're doing right. They have their things that, are like the cutting corners, and it's just not our way. I mean, I can tell you the 5 people that kill it on a daily basis don't have insurance experience. The ones who didn't make it did. And so I look for people that have good attitudes. I look for people that are willing to learn and willing to develop. That's really important. And people with families is really important. I find that, not 99 times out of 100, if you have a family, you put others before yourself, because that's just what you have to do every single day. So, I try and develop my team like a family and do a lot of things with them. And but going back to, I mean, how this all started out, and like the first thing that I was talking about, the sacrifice with it. I mean, when you're chasing after your dream, Erica, my wife, and I basically totaled up how much money we would need to start this insurance agency, and it was a lot. And we knew that we wouldn't be able to do that living in, I think at that time it was like $1,600 a month rent payment. And so we went and we lived in a basement apartment. It was 290 square feet, and it's where Erica and I were at, my first son Brody, and our living room was at. And the only thing that separated it were sheets. And we lived like that for 2.5 years, man. We do what?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Commitment. Thank God that Erica was there to push me when I would get frustrated, or I would compare my journey with somebody else who was making, decent money then. I would just like start seeing the short-term benefits of going somewhere else versus the long-term benefit of owning my own business. She kept me focused. She kept me disciplined. And I mean, that was tough, man. And even moving here, I've been commission only. I wrote it down since 2011. I've never had a base salary before. And when you live that way, and it's like you eat what you kill, the first 3 years moving to a city that you don't know a single person in is tough, man. But you gotta have an accountability partner there. For me, it was Erica, and she kept me focused every single day on like what the long game was on this. And I mean, life is definitely good now, but it's like when you have somebody there to keep you accountable, and then you take your focus off of the things that aren't important, like just money, and focus on developing other people, on building your brand, on meeting people and developing people's lives, enriching people's lives, being a value add. Those are the things that make your journey worthwhile. It's the journey that really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. So in terms of your developing your team and the growth focus on your team, do you find that a more formal approach is appropriate for your team and your environment, or is it less formal and just more communicative? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I am a much less formal type
Yeah.
because I tried the formal route of being able to, I guess, develop people, but it felt forced. If
Right.
somebody is doing it on their own, whether it's after hours over a beer and you're just talking about the different ways that you can develop yourself, then it kind of subconsciously starts working into them that this is actually a career. It's not just a job, and that's
Right.
where I think that people kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah. So what? How big? You mentioned 5 people. It sounds like you have more than 5 on your team.
8 total. Yeah.
8.
Yeah.
What? You pretty happy with your turnover or lack of turnover?
Yeah,
Retention rate?
absolutely. I mean, I think that from a retention standpoint, my first year and a half to 2 years, it was a lot. I mean, obviously, it was a lot higher than what it was right now because you found people who were just at it for a 9-to-5 job, and then you found people who actually cared about helping people. And those two really don't correlate, and so I did have a much higher turnover. I think in my first 2 years, it ended up losing like 8 people total.
Yeah.
But through that, I was able to get a solid team that genuinely cared about really, really helping our customers. And so I think that's kind of a growing pain that everybody's got to go through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the retention now is at 100%.
And I'm making the assumption that you do all the hiring and interviewing and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is nice. And I guess it gives you I get more control, but even deeper than that, like it gives you think of all the data points you've got, right? So those 8 people in the first couple of years, as you mentioned, like it's kind of a learning for you and just a natural evolution of the company. But I think it's cool that you're in a position where you don't have to offload that on and kind of go through somebody else, right? I mean, you get control of that process.
That's right. And every candidate takes 2 tests coming in. They take the DISC personality test, and then they take the Berkman method. And that's kind of they take that virtually. So that's based on those results. We'll decide whether we want to bring them in or not. And then I'll interview them.
Yeah.
If they make it past that, then they go out for a team lunch or a team dinner for the team to kind of fill them out. And then we just kind of all sit down and discuss it.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
So this is kind of a broad question. We don't necessarily have to get too philosophical here, but I just wanted to, now that you've gone through, these last 8 or 9 years we've been talking about, and it sounds like you're at more of a steady state, right? I mean, like you said, you ebb and flow with the economy a little bit, which has been a good story recently, but if it's fair to say that you're in somewhat of a steady state, like what would you consider kind of the guiding principles of your business and the way you operate within your business to either A, maintain, or B, chase some kind of growth pattern this year after?
I mean, the way that I look at it is, let's go down a football route. You compare like a University of Alabama to really anybody else. They move at such a steady but fast pace that it's tough for a lot of people to keep up, So that's kind of the mentality that we have is moving at a fast pace, but something that's consistent and sustainable. Not something that it'll never do good if your growth chart looks like this. You've got to have the steady incline, and if you're at a pace, you better be able to sustain that pace. My guiding principles are being able to be a good father first and foremost, being a good husband, and being a leader.
Yeah.
those three things are what keep me down the straight and narrow. They keep me focused and they keep me on that pace, because if I'm being a good father and being a good husband, that means that I'm at home enough and I'm having that work-life balance. If I'm being a good leader, that means that I'm leading my team, and then I serve on the board of directors for a couple different nonprofits here. So
Yeah.
that's really every single day. Those are my main motivations.
Yeah. What, so maybe we switch gears and I got a couple questions, but I also want to pull in the experience with Thrive. Like, so a lot of this has been around State Farm, but I think, you know, I've just personally been wanting to ask you, you know, more questions about that experience. Saw a little bit on social media, watched some videos, stuff like that. So I've got a little bit of exposure, but how would you, to somebody who doesn't know what Thrive is, like, how would you kind of categorize that chapter of your life?
Yeah. So, like I said, the first year and a half, it was rough. Didn't know anybody here, didn't know any customers, in debt up to my eyeballs. Felt like I was totally out of control, in panic mode every
Yeah.
single day. And
Yeah.
so after like a year and a half, I started going to these networking meetings. And when I went there and I was like meeting different business owners, I found out that they were like going through the exact same thing that I was going through.
Yeah.
And the content that these networking events were providing were kind of a joke. Like nobody really was getting a value add from it. So I started Thrive, the small business network, and it was
Yeah.
really a center of positivity. It kind of, I guess it pushed people outside of their comfort zone when it came to business, daily, whether that was through videos that we produced or our monthly meetings that we did. And it really brought together a lot of small businesses in the Gastonia, Charlotte area. We got up to, I think that it was like 212 businesses that were in attendance. And yeah, it was a really good thing. The referrals that were generated were great. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was an awesome time.
Yeah. So not only were you able to kind of expand your network, but at the same time you're kind of building a community around you, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being the leader, I guess, filling the niche that just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like strategically that was early in your time in Charlotte. So that was as much a business play as it was just kind of your personal desire, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I don't mean. Well, it sounds bad. I'm not trying to. I think it's interesting, right? I think it's because a lot of people have that idea, right? A lot of people are in cities where, man, it would be great if the Young Professional Club did X, Y, and Z, right? We got a lot of like armchair quarterbacks, but you saw a need and you said, hey, like I'm gonna go do something about this. I'm gonna make this better, and you know, selfishly or whatever you want to call it, like one of the byproducts of that is as a business owner, like you're gonna get to see some of the fruits of your labor. Like I don't think there's no shame in like right in saying
Right.
it's not like you wouldn't work for it.
Right.
I think
Right.
you know the story.
Yeah, it definitely, I mean, the main purpose of it was the content. The secondary purpose of it was to be able to think outside of the box and penetrate a market that I wasn't born in, I didn't know anybody in, and
Yeah.
I needed to do something in order to generate leads. Luckily, that ended up being the number one source of leads. I mean, still to this day, I still get business
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah.
And that was probably my most creative, I guess, marketing tactic that I ever did. Just because I didn't really have to focus on driving business to my insurance agency. It was growing that, and that just naturally kind of came with it. So that was another reason why being a good leader, that simple moral value and doing everything 100%, diligence and commitment,
Yeah.
it just ended up benefiting everything. Yeah.
No, I hope I didn't miscategorize. I think it's a cool takeaway because I think it's one just aspect of being a good business person in general. Some people have the idea but don't take action, right? And
right. No, you're the first person that's ever picked up on that ever. I'm impressed, to be honest. Nobody's ever asked me about that.
Well, but it's through the thread of, and I think me and you as millennials, like, we appreciate this more than maybe some of the generation ahead of us, is we have a lot of respect for somebody that's going to create value and then make the connection, as opposed to, I still get this especially on LinkedIn, like on an almost daily basis. You make a connection with somebody, whether you requested it or not, it sometimes it doesn't matter. And then within 30 seconds, you get some big, long email that's trying to shove you some product or fake connection, or it's like, hold on a minute, let's get to know each other, or let's, like, where's the value before you come asking for my money, right?
Right. Take me out on a date, man.
Yeah. So no, I think that's a brilliant way to look at it. But we talk about your routine, your exercising, just kind of mental health and all that. Is there anything else that you would pull into the narrative of, this is how I kind of sustain my momentum and energy, and this is what keeps me motivated?
Having a mentor is very, very important. Whether in your industry or out of your industry, I've got probably 5 that I call very regularly to just bounce ideas off of. But developing a mentor, somebody that's not ever going to tell you what you want to hear, but always tell you what you need to hear. It's very important. Yeah.
So I have this question on here, so I'm going to ask it, but I think I know the answer based on what we just talked about. What aspect of running your business comes most natural to you?
I would say surprisingly, the community development or the community service aspect of it. Being able to, I guess, just genuinely come from a spot of helping people. It's changed the way that I do business, to be honest, because it's kind of the same thing with Thrive. You're never. Have you ever seen Groundhog Day?
Oh yeah.
Ned Ryerson.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I never come across as a Ned Ryerson. Like somebody who's just trying to shove insurance down your throat. It's always somebody who's approaching me because of something. Whether they see me at church or Habitat for Humanity or whatever, or the crisis pregnancy center. It doesn't matter. It's somebody who wants to do business with me because of things I'm doing outside of business. So that's been the most natural thing for me, for sure. The motivational piece of it and being able to grow my team is also another thing that I absolutely love.
Yeah. So when you already talked about it, I'm rewinding a little bit and just had a thought come to mind. You talk about kind of more of an informal development. And we talk about content when you're trying to, coach somebody or build somebody up. Is that something that you kind of have a go-to list of books, or is it something you use kind of like real time? You know what I'm saying? Like, do you have kind of a content library for coaching for Adam Poe's team, or is it more individual basis?
All individual basis. My first year, I tried to make it like this weekly, Fridays at 5, sit down, make it a formal deal, last an hour, but what I found was there's a lot more power in quantity than there is, I guess, the length or quality of the conversation. I found that 5 10-minute meetings each week versus 1 hour long meeting is much more efficient because it keeps it top
Yeah.
of mind for them. And then Wednesdays, we all go out for beers and just kind of talk about the things that they're working on. And they'll ask me different questions about, whether it's positioning a product or how to market correctly or, whatever it may be. And then I just kind of walk through different scenarios with them. But the investment has to be 50-50. And if you don't have somebody who's willing to come halfway, then the development piece of it doesn't really work. So, I think that to answer your question, brief meetings every single day are what wins. Success happens over a long period of time. All of a sudden, it's never just something that happens overnight. It's just that consistent development.
Yeah, and that's one thing, and we obviously didn't talk about this specifically beforehand leading up to this conversation, but you've hit on simplicity and simplify, and you've hit on consistency a lot, which personally really resonates with me because that's something that two things I really value. And actually consistency, I've kind of started the last couple of years, like the word of the year. You hear somebody talk about, what's kind of your personal theme for the year, or what is motivating to you, or what are you working on, as kind of an individual. But what I felt like for me personally captured both my professional expectations for the year, but also personal expectations for the year is the word consistency. So I think I like your approach as far as not trying to let things build up and then address them in a weekly format, but we're going to do consistent. It's just kind of the DNA of who you are and how you operate, and it doesn't become like an extra thing, right? Like it's just
right.
It's expected. It takes less energy to think about it and prepare for it, and kind of keeps the momentum going. Does that make sense?
Right. Yep. It's a part of the process. That's right.